Alright.
Practice.
I'm in the practice test here, and I more or less came in here so I could, like, look at stuff. See where I'm basically at. Basically, I've gone through unlocking all this stuff, right? So... I have, like, a lot of these files complete. I figure it's a good time maybe to start reading about the stuff we got here. And see what it all says.
Asher Kendall. Seen his byline on the OVC.
And there's Asher
Covering up the
Kendall.
Camerata's tracks. Doing a good job.
We've actually haven't met that guy, but it's funny that we have his void here thing. Whatever. Anyhow, I figure it's time to inspect these functions and read a little bit about them, so... Not going to probably lead to details of the upgrades, but... Let's talk about this. So Red. Background. Ranked in the top percentile of Cloudbank's contemporary performing artists for 5 years, Red demonstrated early interest in music despite studying at Traverson Hall. Traverson groomed many of the city's most ambitious civic planners, though Red spent the majority of her time developing the Academy's nascent arts program, and was the first on record to select 2 non-traditional disciplines. Records indicate she was reluctant to explain studying personal reasons. She remained reticent even after gaining a spotlight, and when asked about her past and influences, would often say her work spoke for itself. She did admit, however, that she never wrote her music with intent to stir controversy. And a career. To appreciate the impact of Red's music, consider first the current state of Cloudbank's social climate and how it evolved over the past 2 decades. When an altercation finally erupted in the crowd during one of her performances, it was the first such incident in 4 years. It escalated to the point where administrators were summoned to the scene. As one of the suspects was banned from the premises, he accused Red of being an instigator and profiteer. Red later stated it was in this moment that she fully understood the potent effect her music had on people. She decided to take certain precautions from that point, proceeding from the spotlight to compose new material in relative privacy. Rumors swirled. Then, once she finally re-emerged, trouble followed. So, disappearance. The Camerata found her one night once the crowds dispersed after one of her performances. They have reason to believe that she would be alone, rehearsing said new material. But she was not alone, and the presence of another individual described aspects of Camerata's plan for the night. Red survived the incident, becoming separated from the Camerata due to these unforeseen events on their part. Although her trace data remains intact, partial transfer did occur, including transfer of ownership status as something the Camerata believed theirs. So, that's a little bit about Red, and she's the main character we've been using. And then we got the breach here. So, subject not found. Subject background data corrupted during integration. Reason unknown. Exceptions. Recovered data indicates subject had no selections on record. There is a remote possibility, less than 5%, that this information is inaccurate due to data corruption. In the most likely event that the information is valid, subject by definition cannot be matched with census data, as 0% of Cloudbacks willingly chose non-selection. Disappearance. Timestamp on subject's integration coincides with timestamp of a previous offender user relinquishing access and control. Although subject's trace data was corrupted during integration, nonetheless such data has its uses, and consequently derives a suitable function. Subject's trace data remains disjointed and cannot be recovered. So, this is the guy that we're basically carrying around. We have no idea what he's all about, but there's a little bit about him, I guess. We know nothing about him. Alright, and then we picked up some other stuff like Spark here. So Lillian Platt. One of the preeminent scientific minds in Cloudbank, Miss Lillian Platt was the youngest ever individual to be elected as chairwoman of the OVC board. Under her leadership, the number of OVC terminals in Cloudbanks more than doubled, and the quality of the broadcast strengthened more than 4-fold. However, she then became the youngest ever individual to leave the post, as she tendered a resignation in less than 2 years to pursue extracurricular interests. In private conversations, several of her former colleagues indicated that Miss Platt left following the sudden disappearance of a close personal friend, Mr. Maximilius Darzy, who, according to official OVC transcripts, decided one day to move to the country. So actions taken. Personal records show Miss Platt was preoccupied with certain rumors and urban legends concerning an unusual phenomenon sighted in the northwestern corner of the city, and possibly connections between this and a rash of disappearances during the past 12 months. For undisclosed reasons, she did not wish to involve the authorities. Her access to privileged OVC information may have contributed to her decision. Other records show she engaged in clandestine discussions with individuals claiming to have knowledge of the circumstances surrounding her friend's disappearance. She arranged to meet with them one night at an unmarked port near Goldwalk Bay. Disappearance. Miss Platt never learned the truth about her vanished friend, although in a brief moment she did learn the truth about the unusual phenomenon. To the Camerata, Miss Platt was more of a meddler than opportunity, one of the scarce few who had some knowledge of their movements. When the time came, they made sure that there was nowhere near her last known location. According to the OVC, Miss Platt has been missing for more than 2 weeks, and the trail has gone cold. Incidents of foul play have occurred less than once a year on average for the last 10 years, but authorities have not yet ruled it out in this case. So that's for that. And I'm just gonna jump ahead to Darzi. He's somewhere in here. That's Bailey. I'm pretty sure he's in here. Here we go. Maximilius Darzi. Not everyone wears the Darzi brand. However, 2 years ago, more than 56% of the individuals between the age of 16 and 42 showed interest in or complimented something wearing Mr. Maximilius Darzi's clothing. The self-styled Cloudbank clothier became a fashion icon in the early 20s, and when he introduced the world a garment line that boldly eschewed formal tradition. Not only that, so prolific was his work that seemingly everyone in Cloudbank, in reality it was only 8% of the population at the time, found garments that spoke to them as individuals. In spite of this, all was not well in Mr. Darcy's life. Dependencies. In private, Mr. Darcy suffered from certain dependencies he believed were the source of his talent, or rather the source of his inspiration. Unfortunately, he was correct in his assessment. When he decided to come forward and wean himself for these dependencies, after initial public outpouring of support, his career started to falter. His ideas came less quickly, or he could not act on them as quickly, and so against the wishes of his closest confidant and partner, he resumed his old habits. It was then that Mr. Darcy met certain individuals professing knowledge of his condition, who invited him to participate in an experiment that would cure him without compromise. Believing he had little to lose, Mr. Darcy decided it was worth a shot. Disappearance. It may seem mundane for the Camerata to take interest in a man like Mr. Darcy, yet, from the Camerata's perspective, he was perfect. Here was someone with the capacity to sway thousands in a subtle way, and whose career appeared to be waning. The public would rarely accept that such a man, publicly disgraced, would decide to head to the country away from the bustle of city life, and indeed, the public took this news at face value. All but Mr. Darcy's confidant, whom the Camerata dealt with separately. So basically, the Camerata went after this guy, because he was perfect to go after, and of course, the person here, Lillian Platt, decided to investigate because she didn't think that was right, and then of course she was taken care of as well. So that's the story of all them. So that's here. Let's actually read these two right here, I guess. So, Hunter Delaford. How many cases must one crack to become the most highly decorated detective in the 18th precinct? Even this, Officer Hunter Delaford knew ahead of time, although he never acted privately about it. Of course, Officer Delaford was no mere detective, he was a forecaster. This is one of the rarest and least understood professions in Cloudbank, though the results spoke for themselves. Officer Delaford possessed an almost uncanny ability to solve any mystery that blew into town. So it was that he became very interested in the reasons why the central administration quietly decided to take down the northwestern edge of the Goldwalk district until further notice. Investigation. Officially speaking, Officer Delaford could only do so much under the administration provides sufficient clearance for his own safety. But one of the side effects of Officer Delaford's talents as a forecaster was his insatiable desire to confirm his hypothesis. So he decided to move forward with his investigation, sensing significant trouble and not wanting to sit idly by rather than do his job. What he discovered in Goldwalk shook Officer Delaford to the core. He had never seen anything like it, and his hands shook as he prepared his report on the spot. But he ceased transcription when several individuals approached him. He did not expect them either. Disappearance. The Camerata knew Officer Delaford possessed a significant threat, and as he was the only detective stubborn or determined not to refuse to accept the administration's non-committal answers about what was going on in Goldwalk. After considering several ideas that might draw the officer out, the camera realized they needed only to be patient with him. After all, a forecaster could only predict what was already planned. After Officer Jalfort vanished, the 18th precinct fabricated a palatable explanation for the public. The officer was approaching a retirement age, and together they agreed to name a quarter of his home district in his honor. How nice. And then we got this one here, Bailey Jaland. Miss Bailey Jaland was never one to follow the pack. Due to a variety of social challenges she experienced early on, she grew to care much more about the past than about the future. While this preoccupation at first made her reclusive as a person, in time it flourished as an invaluable skill, which put her at the forefront of a movement to finally rework the city's outdated and incomplete archival system. Then one day, Miss Jelena received a message from her local admin branch, extending her a pre-approved opportunity to head to the city archives. She accepted on the spot. Consultation. Miss Jelan's propensity to look at and find the truth in historic fact patterns made her excel at evaluating possible decisions about the future. She was well regarded for her objectivity and fairness. Anytime a new civic initiative was proposed, Miss Jelan could cite relevant historical data that put the initiative into context, and ultimately let those involved move forward with confidence. She became one of the administration's top consultants, so in spite of her demeanor, she was not surprised when she received an invitation to a private banquet in honor of individuals who gave the most to Cloud Bank. Miss Jelan's surprise came later when she arrived at the site of the banquet to discover the event was only in her honor, and that it was not a banquet at all. The camerata identified Miss Jelan as having a wealth of knowledge about the city's inner workings and an agreeable non-confrontational attitude, which gave her success in her professional interactions. Miss Jelan led a very private life and had no significant interests outside of her work. So when she failed to show up for her duties one day, her colleagues were very troubled, but found no leads to her whereabouts. She never told anyone of the banquet. So, yes, don't keep your life too private or else bad things may happen to you. Alright, so that's 6 of the stuff here. Maybe I'll do some of this other stuff later, but for now, I think 6 is good enough for now. And, well, what can I say? I guess we're done. I don't see any way to look at the other stuff, so I guess that's as good as it gets.
Punching bag for you.
I'll say that's enough for reading this time, and maybe next time I'll do a little bit more. For now, take care.